Hey, Angie, welcome to the podcast. I'm super happy that you're here. For anybody who's not well aware of you and everything that you're doing, can you give them like a small intro about yourself?
Absolutely. First step before we kick off, Valerie, I love everything that you're doing. You are so brave in your life to have all these amazing adventures and advocacy. I'm just so inspired by your work.
Thank
It's
you so
impressive.
much.
Yeah, my journey to where I am today really started when I was in college at the University of Michigan. I enrolled in ROTC, which is military officer training. And when I graduated, I spent 4 years in the United States Marine Corps. I was an officer. I left active duty in 2001. Right, rose to the rank of captain. I was Captain Morgan, which is kind of fun for all the spice rum drinkers out there. Yeah, didn't see that coming, but it happened. And I think the biggest awakening in my life was leaving active duty, actually, and realizing that how we talk about leadership in the military and the private sector are very, very different. And so this is roughly around 2004. I was young, I was ambitious, and I will say naive because I feel like naivete allows you to enter experiences without a full appreciation for what you're stepping into. Because going back, I think to myself, wow, had you known more, maybe you would have prepared more for the journey. But around 25 years old, I started a company and started writing on leadership. I published 3 books on leadership, Leading from the Front, Spark, and Bet on You is my most recent book, and have been designing and delivering training programs for businesses all around the globe.
That's amazing. I'm so happy to have this conversation around leadership for so many reasons, because as a CEO of my own company, I have found leadership to be not as intuitive as I expected it to be. So tell me more about what were some of the key differences that you learned about leadership in the Marines versus what you saw like in the private sector?
Yeah, and I'll start with the thought intuitive, because when you look at the science of leadership, we can go back to, there's an identical twin study at the University of Minnesota that looks at, are we born or are we made leaders? So they looked at identical twins separated at birth to see how much of our ability to influence and inspire comes from our DNA versus life experience. And the interesting fact is that about 30% of our ability to lead comes from our DNA, nature side of us. But the remaining 70%, which is why it isn't always intuitive, is our skills that you can grow and develop and teach. And so one of the things that was most interesting to me when I left active duty, I thought, I have a lot of great sea stories to tell, but the lasting impression were those leadership lessons. I just thought people knew that you had to set the example, that you needed to set your vision and share your vision, and you can't share it enough because it takes a while for people to really feel it themselves. Or accountability. We often talk in the world about accountability as being held accountable versus leading with accountability, accepting responsibility for all I do or fail to do. And those were just some of the subtle differences. What the Marine Corps does very well is they instill this in you. Like they drill it into you. Starting from the very first days of training, you're not allowed to say I, me, or we. You have to speak as this candidate. And you can only really say yes sir, no excuse. And then you start to realize, okay, I have a lot of excuses actually for why things aren't working out, but that's not what you want to hear. And so that no excuses mindset really, really weighs in.
I love that. I am a big one for no excuses. And I think it's one of the things that's gotten me ahead the most is somehow I always find a way to make it work. And I see that with everybody we hire, that the people who don't have excuses and just somehow make it work are the ones who get ahead. So that's really cool to see that principle is also there. Yeah. And I can't believe you said 70% of leadership is actually a learned skill. That's massive.
It's massive. Wow. And don't you wish somebody would have told us this? Like I went to school and in my fight song, it's like, we're leaders and best. But I can tell you getting an English degree, I was not learning how to lead. I was learning Jane Austen. I was learning a lot about wonderful books, but leadership skills I learned in the Marine Corps. And it just comes down to these really core set of behaviors that title doesn't make you a leader. So just because you get positioned into a management role doesn't mean that suddenly you're a leader.
Exactly.
You have an expectation to lead, but you may not know how to do it.
My experience, even starting as like a teenager or in college, is that because I was always like a good employee who showed up on time and worked hard, I would always get promoted to a leadership role. And it's a completely different set of skills to then make sure that everyone you're leading is also doing the same thing. And I have one friend who's also in the military. Her name's Diana, and we always joke about how she loves leading a team. And I was like, are you kidding me? That's like the hardest job out there, is to be a leader and to be a manager. And she loves it. So what are, I guess, a couple actionable behaviors that you think leaders should do to become a good leader?
I think it starts with the mindset first, and you hit on a few of those core ideas. When you're leading people, it is a different skill set. And so if it's challenging, it's because it's a different skill set. It's not necessarily one that we learn. So I think the very first thing, if you're leading a team, is to have a philosophy about how to transform a group of individuals into a team. And the Marine Corps really proposes this concept of servant-based leadership. Not you work for me, rather I work for you. So it's therefore in my best interest to make sure all your needs are met, like holistically as a human being. One of the practices that I often endorse with some of my coaching clients is let's write down the name of every single person on your team. And let's talk about how well you know them. What's their family situation? What's their education and experience? What are their personal goals? What are their professional goals? And what you don't know, how are you going to find that out? And with what it is that you do know, how can you help? Because it's up to you to help remove barriers for people. And then the second thing is, do people even know what they do well and where they can improve? And one of the greatest questions, I tell everybody this, like, watch this. It is magic when this happens. If you go to somebody and say to them, I want to share with you something that you do better than everybody else, you just watch their face light up. I don't care if it's like the curmudgeon down the office that you feel isn't going to respond to this, but you just watch what happens when you say that to somebody, because it really can have a transformative impact when people really understand what it is that they do well.
That's such a good question. I feel like after this, I'm going to say that to all of my team members, because they all do have like a special strength. And I know that they would love to hear that and know that they're being recognized in that way.
Yeah. And like you see it, like, right. You can say, I see you, and you do this really well, and lean into it.
That's amazing. For us, we have a lot of, obviously what we do, we have like remote team members from African countries that we plug into US teams. Do you think there's a different way as a leader to lead remote teams versus ones that are maybe like in-house in your office? Or do you think it's kind of like the same thing, the same principles?
I feel as if it's the same principles. The only thing I would encourage people with virtual teams to do more is have more agendaless conversations. Because I think about my first job out of the Marine Corps was in pharmaceutical sales. It was a remote job. And I remember my boss would always call me with an agenda. And I would see her name on caller ID, and I'm like, oh gosh, I'm not ready for this. But one time she called me and she just wanted to talk. And I'm just like, oh, this is great. And it was really refreshing. And so try to think about having agendaless conversations so you can just get to know people without an agenda. It's kind of nice.
That is really nice. And that actually makes so much sense, because I know that our clients who really spend time getting to know the remote team members, they always get the best results. And they always have so much fun too. Like once you start to see the personalities of the people we hire, they're a blast. And I always feel bad for the clients who don't spend that time getting to know them, because they're super funny, like inside and outside of work. So no, that's really cool that you, it's like scheduling time just to talk without like a real clear KPI coming out of it.
Oh, that is great. And it's funny as you're talking about building those interpersonal relationships. I firmly believe that everybody carries around with them discretionary effort that they would give if they really truly felt connected to the individual. That discretionary effort could be initiative. It could be a new idea. It can be a new innovation. It could be like tens of thousands of dollars to your business if you invest the time to get to know somebody. Because if we can transact, we'll get the job done. But if I know you and I know that I care about you, we suddenly have this magical relationship where we're willing to go the extra mile for each other.
Exactly. And how do you balance that with taking care of the individual who may be having an off day or not feeling well, so they probably shouldn't push themselves and go to work, but at the same time you still have the actual business needs, of things still have to get done for the client. So where do you draw the line and how do you make both work?
That's a tough one.
Mm-hmm.
The Marine Corps. And it's funny how long ago in my life I did have that Marine Corps experience, but how powerful and lasting the lessons are. Like if you can imagine, if you're listening, like this long line, horizontal line, on one end is mission and the other one is people. And you're constantly as a manager going back and forth, like, how do I handle mission, like our job, our results, and how do I take care of the people? And there's constant conflict and tension with that. And the way that the Marine Corps taught us to resolve that is mission first, people always. So it's really not resolving it. It's just recognizing that you need both are equally important and neither can be compromised. And so with goals, I think the best thing that you can always do is just have very, very clear expectations and results and have performance-based conversations to let people know how they're doing and where they're succeeding, where they're not. And I think that takes care of those awkward conversations where people aren't hitting the mark because you've already built the cadence, right? Like people already know what it is that you're doing. And when it comes to feedback, giving people feedback, 4 pieces of positive feedback to every 1 piece of developmental also really helps. It scientifically, that's how people grow and develop. And yeah, you're going to have to deliver difficult information like, wow, you missed the mark on this report or you missed this deadline. But at least you know that you've been invested in and that I care about you to be able to take that withdrawal.
That's so good. That's a really good way to frame it. I want to switch gears and ask you about your books because I know it's a massive dream for so many people to write a book, and you've written 3 and they've been very successful. How did you even go about getting your books to that level of success? What went into that?
A lot of failures, and misery, and tears, and frustration. I mean, honestly, the first one was the hardest. It took about 2 years. I've had a co-author, Courtney Lynch, on all my books. And the first one was the most painful because we just didn't know what it is that we're doing. I was an English major, but that means I like to read, not so much like to write. I had to write. I didn't know how to write business nonfiction. And so when you're the English major, though, you take on the bulk of the writing work. And so I think you just have to sit down and put the time into it.
Okay.
And accept the fact that it's going to suck and not be attached to a specific outcome. And just start with the process. But even before then, the best thing, with all the books that we've done before anything else is get a really, really solid outline. Okay. And a sense of how you want to tell your story. And one of the best things I would do is like pick up 4 of your favorite, if you want to write business nonfiction, pick out 4 of your favorite business nonfiction, see what they're doing in their introduction, see how they're using stories, and just see the choices that those authors are making. And from that, just find out what feels most natural to you.
That's so good. And how did you market your books? Like, how did you actually get readers to know about it and start reading them?
The first one, it was a different time. It wasn't as crowded of a book market. And for specifically military books, we published our military leadership for women professionals in 2006, I think it came out. And that wasn't a really popular genre, or at least as popular it is today. And so we were very fortunate that we got on Fox News and we hired a publicist and we were able to get these key media placements. Spark was great in the sense that it became a New York Times bestseller. And by that point,
fantastic.
It was.
Congratulations.
Really, thank you. It was really, though, a byproduct of, by that point, we'd been in business for 15 years. We'd been building a really large distribution list. And so I always think about those marketing books. It's never just one thing. It's multiple things. So if you want to write a book, develop your platform, develop your social media presence, and blog, like build a community around your work. And I think that's been most successful. And then, of course, hire a publicist. They help you too.
Yeah. No, that's really cool to hear. And one last question. I hope this isn't too personal, but I heard that I think a lot of people have come to us and say, like, I'm writing a book, even though there's no money in writing a book, it's just to then get people to sign up for my course or my program. Is that true? Do you feel like authors in this day and age can do well selling a book, or is it really kind of a means to an end to actually lead customers to a more profitable revenue?
That was the biggest mind shift I've had in publishing. And there's no such thing as too personal a question with me. So this is nothing, Valerie. You can go deeper if you want. No, yeah, I don't think of books as money makers. Okay. I personally don't. I think you'd have to sell like 500,000 copies, 1 million copies to actually really see a return on the investment. I think books are really great gateway products to coaching, to keynoting, to consulting projects. And so in fact, with Spark, I think one of the reasons it was so successful is we gave away a lot of copies so we could get the word of mouth for the book out there. And so I routinely give away books to help fan the flames of future opportunity.
Amazing. I've heard that from a lot of other authors that like the biggest thing was giving away free books. And then eventually that generated enough publicity for it to really take off. So that's interesting to see that worked for you as well. One
more thing, like in your book, try to get online experiences too, like have something that people can learn. So there's a book and a learning companion, like with Spark, there is sparkslead.us. And there's a whole learning system. Same with Bet On You. We offered a risk manifesto so you can go someplace and create a product from the work.
Okay. Oh, no, that makes a lot of sense. Wow. Thank you for sharing that tip. Yeah. I want to also ask you about Be the Actual. Like, I know as soon as I was on your website, that was like the first thing that stood out. So what does that mean, Be the Actual?
I have always loved that phrase in the military. So if you're in the military, you know that if you're on the radio network and you call for the actual, who you're trying to reach is the commanding officer. That is their call sign. But more symbolically, it is the person who just gets stuff done. They call the shots. They make the tough decisions. What do you need? I will get it to you. And I love that metaphor for our own lives. I don't think a lot of us see ourselves as the actual in our own lives, that we're actually the person who gets stuff done. I think we find ourselves reliant on other people, our businesses to take care of us. But when you stop and realize that, no, I drive the result, I create the vision, I make it happen, it all comes down to me, it shifts your perspective to really taking control of your power. The power that you have to influence the direction of your life. And so I'm writing more on the actual concept. I'm just surprised more people don't know about it. I'm really excited to share more about this wonderful metaphor.
It's amazing. Yeah, I wasn't aware actually that in the military, like the actual, I haven't heard that before. So that's a really cool concept. What are a couple of things that, people think maybe they're taking responsibility for, but maybe there's really an excuse there or something that we don't realize that we're not taking as much ownership for? What are some things that you think most people, especially business leaders, could take more ownership for that maybe we're not aware of?
Our time. How are you using your time and your mindset? Are you just hoping that things happen for you, or are you really making things happen for you? I've been influenced by a lot of really great thought leaders, and I'm constantly checking in with myself too. Are my dreams big enough? Are they big enough? Can they be supersized a little bit more? Mm-hmm. And how am I using my minutes, and where am I wasting my minutes? If I'm going to commit 8 hours to work, how am I, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs commit much more, but let's just say 8 hours. I'm going to commit 8 hours Monday through Friday to pursuing my dream. How am I using that time? And is it really dedicated to the highest, best use of that time to achieve my goals? So I feel like, the accountability over our mindset, taking control too, like self-promotion, using that versus self-doubt, and really just reiterating to yourself that what you want is possible. Other people are doing similar things like what you want to be doing. And if they can do it, why can't you? Mm-hmm. What are they doing differently? Yeah.
That's been one of the biggest realizations I had as starting Cradle and what we were doing. I always was like, maybe we're not measuring up to other remote team members, other outsourcing countries, because we hire from African countries, which is more rare in the outsourcing world. And the more and more I dive into it, the more our team is like, we're doing this and we are really good at it. And we're all women. And so I think we all suffer from a little bit more self-doubt, or we're not as confident as we should be, because we are, again, like an all leadership team of women. And I think that's one thing that we've done internally is like, no, we're going to own that we actually are doing a really good job and start promoting that more. And it's been a massive shift in terms of like just even our sales and our marketing, like that energy is showing up in a really positive way. So I love that concept of, taking ownership for, the good things that you are doing and knowing that you can do it and sparking those words into your brain and into your life.
I think about what would happen if we took all the time invested in self-doubt and we switched it to self-promotion. Mm-hmm. Versus thinking about why we can't or why we can and here's how. And, spending our conversational energy on the possibility of success versus the, limited probability maybe that we can push things. And so I think that's, again, like how we're using our mind, how we're using our time, and just the collective energy then it generates.
What are some things that leaders, like good leaders, do differently with their time?
I find that they really preserve their most precious asset, and that's their mind. There comes a time when you're leveling up in your career and you're going to inevitably faced with more uncertainty regarding your decisions, regarding, the things that you want to do strategy wise. And so how are you preserving your mind to think clearly about the choices around you? Because a lot of folks, they're like a dog on a choker collar, and their mind, I would say, just gets really jumbled. It's like unmixed cookie dough batter. There's just like a lot of chunks going on in there. And like, there's not really smooth, clear thoughts, but you can't level up if you're cluttered. You have to find a way to, dare I say, meditate. I meditate. I think that's been a critical process, or like go for a walk. Like, how do you get to a good mental headspace to make really good decisions?
A walk always does it for me. Like if I'm missing part, meditation, I'm always in and out. I have not been consistent with it, but a walk is like the thing, like a 20-minute walk, and I can come back and I know exactly what to do and I feel so much better. Tell me more about the meditation you are doing it. Do you do it like every morning? Do you just do it when you're stressed? What does it look like for you?
A little bit of both. I have like right behind me, I went to the home store and bought a dog bed of all things because it was like a perfect mat for me. I'm like, I want a big pillow, but they were too puffy. I'm like, I just need a dog mat. So I bought like a dog mat, and I just give myself a 10-minute a day goal. And sometimes I think about just like an intention, or sometimes I just try to really just listen to my breath. And I mostly do it when I'm stressed or when I'm trying to start the day and really achieve a lot that day. So I'm not, I think, a purist with my practice. I'm still like a hack, very much an amateur, but really enjoy the quiet time.
I think sometimes you don't, I almost like, I don't want to do it because like the meditation teacher says I have to do it for 20 minutes a day in the morning and the afternoon. But no, 10 minutes sitting in quiet with an intention feels very doable. And a dog bed actually would be so comfortable, because I did buy like the traditional meditation cushion. Not comfortable. I think that's maybe one of the reasons why.
Well, it's funny because I'm like looking and I'm like, these meditation mats are like $70, $80. Okay. Yep. But a dog mat at the discount home store was like $25. I'm like, oh, that's perfect. Exactly.
And it's more comfortable. I'm just curious, do you have a dog?
Oh, I just lost my poor little Sully, but I don't have a dog right now, but
bad question. I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine. God bless Sully, but so that's probably where I sit and commune with him too.
Oh, so sweet. Well, you have to get like a new puppy or a new little
my son is already working on that. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. And one last thing to end with. So I know we spoke about you've never been to an African country before, which is actually very exciting because you don't know exactly how amazing they are until you actually get there. So I'm very, I will plan your itinerary.
That's what I need. I need a guide, Valerie.
Yes. Is there anything, like when you think of going to the African continent, is there anything that stands out that you're like, I would love to do this. I would love to take my family and do something?
I would love to go to Ethiopia. I hear that it is breathtaking and amazing. Yes.
Are you a
And
coffee drinker?
I was going to say coffee. Yes, I would love to gain that experience. And if I were to take my kids, of course, we'd want to go on a safari.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's amazing. Ethiopia, for sure, for anybody who drinks coffee, Ethiopia should be on your bucket list because it is truly the best coffee. And they have coffee ceremonies where they're like roasting the coffee beans in front of you. And then like they walk around and you like waft in the smell. And then there's like 3 cups that you drink, and popcorn is always served with, or coffee is always served with popcorn, and there's incense. It's like a whole ritual. So I'm happy to see that you want to go to Ethiopia. That's where most of our team members are. So if you go, you will have a million invites to visit. Yeah. And then, yep, a safari is also cool. And so for anybody who is interested, yeah, South Africa, Tanzania, Kenya, I'm always telling people a safari it's on everybody's bucket list, but it's actually really worthwhile. It's really a cool experience. So that's amazing. And I'm happy to help you in any way once you get to the continent.
I will definitely take you up on that. Thank you, Mallory. That sounds, again, to get a personal guide who has had such tremendous life experiences in the continent.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
No, it'd be so cool. Well, for business leaders out there who are like, I would love to learn more about leadership and how to be the actual, what are some of the best ways you support them, and how do they find you?
Well, thank you for that question. I blog each week and I send it out on Monday. It's a way to get your leadership mindset right as you approach the week ahead. And so if you visit angieconnect.com, you'll see my blog. I have a podcast. It's called Bet on You, and it's all about how to take risks in your life. And yeah, you'll get to learn more about my work. And I really love building and contributing to a community of people who are just thinking of unique ways to get better. And I always say, like, leadership isn't just a 9-to-5 skill set. It really is a mindset that you can really embrace in your whole life. And so I'm honored to just help facilitate those ideas.
Amazing. I'm honestly going to go sign up for your newsletter right now because I feel like a dose of like leadership advice every Monday is exactly what I want to read. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to encourage everybody who's listening to do that. And then we'll put your website and your podcast and all of those links in the show notes as well. So thank you so much, Angie, for joining. And
thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here.
I gained so much myself. So thank you so much.